All right, welcome back to the PCC podcast. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode today. And today I'm going to be talking about a very seemingly simple topic that's going to solve a lot of your snacking and maybe overeating problems at night, and that is balanced meals. If you've ever struggled with cravings, if you've ever struggled with just snacking, grazing throughout the day, maybe mindless snacking at night and feeling like you keep going back to the pantry, going back to the fridge, and you can't really figure out why that is because you've already eaten for the day and you're like, why? I'm not that hungry. Why do I keep doing this? Or just sweets cravings, sugar cravings, salt cravings. If you struggle with any of those things, then you might be missing this one very important component in your day. And that component is our balanced meals. And so our balanced meals are essentially how we figure out what our starting place is for knowing how much to eat and what to eat, right? And so that's a big question that I get from a lot of you ladies, especially in the Facebook group that we have, but what to eat and how much to eat. And so this training is going to walk you through exactly how to solve those problems and probably get to the root of the issue, right? Because a lot of times we think, well, sugar cravings, salt cravings, maybe I'm deficient in a certain nutrient or whatever, or maybe maybe I'm getting these cravings because it's my hormones, period, whatever. But ultimately, most of the time, it's a lot more simple. Most of the time, we're just not hitting the basics, which is why I created this challenge in the first place. So I think, honestly, most of the time, we're either not eating enough or not eating enough of a balance of meals. And so we will definitely be looking at how are we putting things together on our plate on a day-by-day and meal-by-meal basis. And that's why the premise of this challenge is to focus strictly on, can I have at least 2 balanced meals per day? And if you can have 3 or 4, that is amazing, but we're going to start with 2 because that's very, very simple. So a balanced meal has 4 main components, and that is our protein source, our lean protein, our carbohydrate, our vegetable, and our healthy fat source. And so these 4 things, and you can actually use the palm of your hand and your whole hand to estimate the portion size for each of these. So make sure that you have this down. This is also in your 5-day reset starter packet. But for the lean protein source, you're going to want to use the palm of your hand, about the size of maybe a deck of cards if you want to kind of have a comparison. But palm of your hand should be about the size of the protein that you eat. A scooped hand, whatever you could scoop out with your hand like this, you should be able to have for your carbohydrate, your starchy or complex carbohydrate. Your vegetables, I think of it as like a claw hand. So if I were to take my full hand and just like grab around my whole fist, then that's the serving of vegetables that I would be able to eat. So whatever you can basically like reach down, the biggest grab that you possibly can, about the size of your fist. And then finally, your fat source should be about the size of your thumb. And so the reason why we do this is because this gives you the right approximate balance of macronutrients that helps stabilize blood sugar, have enough protein to keep you fuller for longer, slows down the digestion of those carbohydrates, lowers any sort of blood sugar response, and those healthy fats, that protein helps keep you fuller for longer, and then that fiber in the vegetables helps you keep you fuller for longer. And so between meals, you should feel fairly satiated between meals, and you should feel really, really good between meals versus feeling like you get hungry an hour later, or like you have cravings right away, or you need to eat something sweet right after. Like, you should feel fully satisfied. And so that is what a balanced meal is. And ultimately, we want to make sure that we understand that everything I just said, while it's super beneficial and while we want to practice that, those hand portion sizes are a starting point, but they are not a prescription, right? Like, this is just a starting place for you to look at your meal, eat the thing, and say, okay, did this hold me over for 2, 3, 4 hours? If so, I'm probably in a good range with this meal. But if it wasn't enough and you got hungry an hour later, then you probably need to up your portion sizes. And I know that's pretty scary for most women. Most women do not want to eat more. But the reality of it is that upping those portion sizes in the meal is actually going to prevent a ton of overeating and snacking at night later, right? So let's say, devil's advocate, you don't increase your portion sizes. You say, you know what, I'm going to listen to exactly what Marissa said, and I'm scared to raise my portion sizes further, so I'm just going to use that, even though I got hungry like 1 hour later. If that is the case, then what's probably going to happen is trying to hold off with willpower, with discipline, with just trying to not have whatever it is you're craving after. It's probably going to eventually lead to some sort of overindulgence or binge later in the evening. Whereas if you were to have just increased your portion sizes by, say, 10, 15, 20%, and maybe that added an extra 100 calories to your meal, you probably would have been fuller for much longer, not had to deal with those cravings, and just be able to have like your next meal and then go to bed, and not have hundreds and hundreds of extra calories of an overindulgence later on in that evening, right? And so that's the cycle that we're really trying to stop from happening, is that nighttime picking and snacking and going back, and almost that like unconscious, like, oops, I ate half the pantry, I wonder what happened, right? Like, we oftentimes don't realize because we're so tired by the end of the day, but that's really what happens if we don't have our balanced meals. So just know that it is a starting place and not a prescription, so you can modify those serving sizes up. I wouldn't say to modify them down, honestly, because like that's a great starting place for most people. And if you're a small human being, then you have smaller hands, so that's going to be proportional to you. And then the only other distinction that I should make is that for women and men, this does differ. And so if you do have your husbands, your partners, and you guys are watching this together, women should go with 1 portion size of each of the 4 items in a balanced meal, and men should go with 2. And so this will give us a much better estimate of what that should look like for men and women, because I've worked with women before who have kind of like had their husband follow along with the exact framework that they were using with those hand portion sizes, and the husband would just plummet in weight really, really fast, and almost to an unhealthy degree where they were losing weight so fast and they had so many cravings or were so hungry all the time that I was like, this isn't enough, right? Now, I didn't come up with these portion sizes. This whole method was developed by one of the most prestigious nutrition coaching certifications in the entire industry. But it is 1 for women, 2 for men. And I will say, even though it might feel great to lose a bunch of weight right off the bat as a guy, at the beginning, it is going to bite you in the butt at the end if you do go too fast. So just keep in mind that if your husband is watching along, or if you want to implement this as a family. So that way, you don't have to really worry about, am I eating boiled chicken and rice or sweet potato and something that's on a boring cookie cutter meal plan. Just worry about, can I get a portion of each thing, and also be flexible and be creative. So for example, the thing I love to use as an example is like when your kids want mac and cheese, your kids want Kraft mac and cheese, and you're like, that's bad, can't have that, it's going to be terrible for everyone. I want you to really rethink that. Mac and cheese, what is it? It's not the best, right? It's processed, but let's see what we can do here, right? Because the goal is for you to not have to make separate meals for yourself and separate meals for your family. So let's say you made mac and cheese. The pasta, is a carb. It's not a super starchy or complex carb, but it's a carb. So like, let's get over it and let's just use it. And then the cheese powder product, whatever it is a fat. It has some fat in it, and then we add like the butter and the milk. And with that sort of a thing, you can even make it with skim milk. You can make it with less butter, and that can still come out really, really well. But let's say we do that, right? Let's say we have the mac and cheese, that's our carb and our fat right there. So then let's just add our vegetable and our lean protein. So like maybe we add some lean chicken breast to that, and then maybe we add some steamed broccoli or some green beans, and we just put it all together for some mac and cheese with our protein and our vegetable. That is technically a balanced meal. And let's say on the go, I love using this example for my athletes who maybe don't have the full stomach for a sit-down meal in between matches at a tournament, right? But for anyone who's on the go, let's think about Jimmy John's, Subway, Jersey Mike's, right? These sub places, You're like, oh, there's no way I could do this here, right? Well, let's think about it. Our carbohydrate is our bread, and maybe there's a little bit more bread in proportion to everything else, but hey, this doesn't have to be perfect. It's not an exact science. We're just trying to do a little bit better than before and stay mindful. And then our meat, our lean protein would be our deli meats. So go with a leaner cut. So turkey, ham, roast beef, they're all super lean cuts of meat. They have some more sodium, but they will still get you the protein that you need. And then our cheese or our mayo or our oil can be our fat, but it would be one, right? Because the size of our thumb is not a lot. So think about that, just moderating, picking and choosing and saying, I'm just gonna have one of these fat sources. And then our vegetables. Let's add some pickles, some tomatoes, some lettuce, some banana pepper, some spinach, like onto that sandwich and just pile it up. We can get some vegetables on there. Now, are the portions perfect? No, but it can still be better than saying, screw it, I'm just going to get a meatball sub because I can't be healthy here, right? So little things that we can do with this balanced meal concept to be creative and get more out of having meals with our family, having meals on the go, but understand how to put things together. So I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope that this made everything make more sense. Let's work on getting at least 2 of these balanced meals per day and really just pay attention to how does that feel in your body? How's your hunger? How are you being held over between meals? All right, I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of the podcast. Now, if you couldn't tell, this was a pre-recording for a live stream that I did within our free Facebook group for a free challenge that we did that just helped teach our community about balanced meals and how to implement them. So if you would like to be a part of that community, if you'd like to join in on the fun, we do a lot of free challenges every single year, go ahead and hit the link in the description below and that'll take you to our group so you can join. Just put a note in there that you came from the podcast so we know to add you in. And thank you so much for listening. I hope that you learned something, that you took away something valuable. Make sure you leave a review, a rating for the podcast, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, and thank you so much for your attention. I know it's the most valuable resource out there, and I will hope to see you back here next week.